season. It was very, very hot. If you walked just around Wandegeya, you would feel like you needed something to cover your head. When we'd get out of office and step outside, you'd feel like you needed a cover of some sort. And I want to believe many of us were going to bed without covering ourselves. And I think we are still doing so. What was so surprising that when I walked into FEMA in Makerere, just getting into the compound, it looked like those guys were not in Uganda. It was very, very cool. Once you get out of the campus, you start enjoying the heat. So that made me start thinking this morning as we get into this launch, the reflection on where we are in terms of the tree cover and how much it could do for us to kind of moderate the climate around us. Imagine if each one of us was planting a tree every time you have a birthday, or every time you get a baby, or every time you have every time your child brings home a report. How many trees would we be having? I thought for me that is something we need to think about. Away from that, my name has been said, so I won't have to repeat it. And I would like to thank each one of you for setting aside time to come here, because as you know, post-budget, there are so many back-to-back events taking place. And so you being able to set aside this time and say, I'm going to be in this meeting, we don't take that for granted. It's a pleasure to have you all. So why are we here today? Essentially, as people who collect data, would like to share with you our findings on what citizens have been experiencing in terms of climate variability, climate change, in terms of their views. But most importantly is for us to have a conversation. And that conversation is to see what is it could we do as you reflect on that experience in the trees and us who are walking on the streets or working elsewhere. How we experience the heat, how we experience the season onsets, especially the rains. And most importantly, also to reflect on the budget. I was just telling Robert that yesterday as the minister spoke, read the budget speech, he recapitalized the UDB. He gave it 5.5 billion. But when you look at that money, it includes a proportion that goes to green financing, so that there is climate adaptation and mitigation. So I was asking myself, of the 5.5 billion, what proportion is going to go to climate adaptation and mitigation? I hope the panelists will paint my picture, because I believe maybe it's something we need to do and make sure we act. The second thing that I noted is that as they were reading the budget, they allocated 982.56 billion towards in the energy sector. There are many things therein, but one of the things that budget, a proportion of it should be supporting, is clean cooking technologies. I would be curious, what proportion will that be? That can actually show us that we are making movements in that direction. And of course, you will recall that the UNEP report 2023 actually called on all nations to deliver economy-wide low-carbon development transformations with a focus on energy transition, meaning that we need, because if you think about Uganda, as the speakers will be showing you, that in Uganda, over 90% of our energy consumption is in form of biomass, meaning that most of our households, we are still using charcoal, we are still using fuel wood, we are clearing the vegetation I earlier spoke about. And Ugandans are basically worried. So I'm hoping that through this conversation with the different members of the panel, with all of us together, we can brainstorm, we can reflect, but most importantly, beyond this room, when we go back, as I said, as a starting, we are motivated for each one of us to plant a tree every time we have something to celebrate, every time we have somebody to send off. You know, where I come from, my community has started a culture, a practice that when we are, do we say celebrations of the deceased or burial? Whichever way it is, whichever we want to look at it. The king where I come from has a bylaw that when we are burying, we plant trees. So just to say that as we discuss, let's reflect on some of those things we need to do, because it's calling for action, but action is all of us, not only a few of us. We cannot sit back and say act when we are folding our hands. We are in this together, and together we'll be able to deliver the results that we need to improve and be better to respond to the climate change challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Violet. What a surprising end. I didn't see it coming. All right. Thank you for those nice words and opening this meeting. Once again, I'm Alan Asinkuza. I work with Twaweza. And now I will invite Marie Nanyanzi to manage for us 2 consecutive sessions. One, Marie would like to know, what is this methodology? How do you get this data? And then you will tell us the findings from your recent study. Thank you. Welcome, Marie. You can escort her with a hand clap as she comes in, since we chose not to clap for the country lead. So Marie can take that cup. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And once again, thank you for being here. We don't take it for granted. For the methodology, I would like to first start with a video that will be played by the gentleman at the back. It's usually easier to digest the video. Ephraim, the Sauti video. Okay. That means I have way less to say about the methodology. Not so. Okay, so my job is pretty much to share the findings from the report, but I would like to first say something else. When we hear the term climate change, many of us might look at this conversation as something that is reserved for the elite, something that we see people talk about, that they've gone for a conference maybe somewhere in Germany or Dubai. I believe that's what many Ugandans would think. And some might even think that this is a very boring topic. I mean, today if we're talking about something maybe like taxes, you'd probably see a lot more faces, I'm thinking. Because climate change is not something that many people find easy to digest. They look at it as something that is filled with scientific jargons. I hear carbon emissions, abstract concepts, all that. But allow me to bring this closer to home. Article 39 of the Constitution of Uganda states that every Ugandan has a right to a clean and healthy environment. And this statement is not only for the policymakers or even for the environmentalists, but it's for each and every one of us, because it's a right. When I read that in the National Climate Change Policy, I was like, oh, actually we do have that right. Yes, I was surprised. You could say I'm quite green, but I believe there are a lot more people out there that have that thinking that a clean environment is not necessarily a right for me, but it actually is. So now imagine that the vibrant forests of Uganda, the lungs of our nation, are cut and they are slowly disappearing due to deforestation. Or even picture the wetlands, where we are finding some of them are being filled with soil to pave way for industries or even homes. Or the scenarios where we find that those reserved pieces of land are entangled in land title issues. When did we get to that point? That a reserve, you find that somewhere in the media they are saying maybe 8 people have plots in a land reserve. When did we get to that point? We've seen in recent times the houses that have been crushed in the wetland. When did we get to that point that people comfortably settled and then in the end, life? Something that is not for the elite, but for each and every one of us. So today, let's reframe the conversation and explore what Ugandans know about climate change. The report that you have on your tables is titled A Burning Planet. It's already happening. These are Ugandan citizens' views and experiences of the climate crisis. This will be the flow of our presentation, but I won't say much about the methodology. I'll just take questions at the end. Maybe I'll say a line or two. So our objective is pretty much to understand the citizens' opinions and experiences on climate change. For the methodology, the video that you watched at the start had 2,000 respondents. That is for our first panel that we had in Uganda. That panel was set up in 2017, and we closed that panel in 2020. We are now in a second panel. With this second panel, we made some adjustments due to a number of requests that were made to us to ensure that we are able to produce data that has some regional representation. So we increase the size of the panel to 3,000 households across the entire country from 2,000. And that has given us room to be able to see what happens at the different sub-regions. Then our sampling error is plus or minus 2 with a 95% confidence level. The funding for this work is purely done by Twaweza. So this is a snapshot of the panel and the panel members, where you see the map of Uganda and those orange dots. Those are the locations that we have actually visited to collect this data. The reason I'm showing you this is that quite often after sharing the data, we are asked a question of, did this study only happen in Kampala? So this is just to clear that, to pack that and know that, okay, this study happened across the entire country. And we are mindful of having a representation that is proportionate to the size of the population. So where we have a higher population density, we have more dots. That means we've sampled more households in those locations to ensure that we have a good representation across the entire country. Now to the citizens' experiences. Let's see, what do the citizens understand by climate change? We conducted a similar study in 2022, and we asked a question, looking at the overall climate, would you say it is getting better, worse, or remains the same? And we followed up that question with something else. We asked, how concerned are you about the impact of climate change in your life? And in 2023, we saw that 57% of Ugandans said that the climate change was getting worse, the overall climate was getting worse. That is 57%, more than a half. Then in terms of the level of concern, are you concerned, are you in the middle, or not concerned? We find that 86% of Ugandans are very concerned about the changing climate. So overall, the majority are concerned, and they're actually thinking it's getting worse. What do Ugandans think is the cause of climate change? 70% say that it's caused by deforestation. 19% say it's the destruction of the wetlands. Then 9% say it's just a natural cause. It's meant to happen anyway. 7% say it's the bush burning. And then 6% then we have a 6% that say it's God's plan. Yes, they are there. It's God's plan that disposal, afforestation, charcoal burning, and so on. But when we look at the different demographic variables, we have women, we have, the gender, we have the rural, we have the age bracket, we have the household economic status, we have the level of education, and then the different sub-regions, or the different regions. Here we see that when specifically what caught my attention here was the issue of deforestation. Among those that say that deforestation is the main cause, we see that the proportion of men that said it's deforestation is higher compared to the women. Now for the environmentalists or the climate activists, what does that say about the level or the amount of information women have about climate change? Does it say something? Does it indicate something? Maybe that is something that we can explore later on. Then we also noticed through this data that when it comes to those that are saying it's God's plan, this is most likely going to happen among those that are less educated, then the older generation, and also among the poorer generation, the poorer people. Does this say something about exposure, the amount of information received? Your guess is as good as mine, but those are areas that I would like us to explore further. Our third insight, we try to understand the citizens' experience of climate change. What have they noticed? So we did notice that when it comes to the amount of rainfall received, 53% of the Ugandans said that they experienced more rain in the rain season over the past 5 to 10 years. Then when it comes to the onset, 67% said that the rain season started much later. So they are saying it's more rain and starting much later. Then when it comes to the duration of the rain season, 53% say that the rain season has been shorter than before. What does that say about the farming? Then when it comes to the temperature, 54% said the temperature had decreased over the past 5 to 10 years. We only noticed a small number, 5%, who said that for them they had not observed any changes. Things were normal. But you know, there are some of us who won't even know who is seated next to them. They just go through life. Yeah, it happens. So between 2022 and 2023, we have seen that more Ugandans are inclined to report an increased rainfall, extended rain season, a decreasing temperature over the past 5 to 10 years. However, more are inclined to mention a later start of the rain season. And when we asked what other environmental changes have Ugandans observed over the past 5 to 10 years, the highest mention was agricultural yields have declined. That was mentioned by 66%. Agricultural yields have declined. So they're able to see it. It's no longer an elitist topic. Ugandans are feeling it and they can actually sense what is happening. They mention other effects that, like roads flooding, changes in the start of the rain season, and so on. So now let's dive into their experiences of climate change effects. We asked a question: have you experienced any climate change in the means, have you experienced any change in the means through which you secure basic needs for you and your household in the past 5 to 10 years? And here we see that in 2023, 68% say that yes, they have experienced some changes and things are getting worse in terms of securing basic necessities for their households. This number has slightly decreased between 2022 and 2023. But overall, things are still harder for Ugandans. Then when we look at how these environmental or climate changes have affected their household and country as a whole, we see that across the household, the community, the country, the majority do say that yes, they have had some changes. or that this has affected their household. 8 out of 10 households, and then at community level, it's 83%. Then when we asked, how has this climatic or environmental change affected your household? Because we've seen the number was high. More than 8 at household level, more than 8 at community level mentioned that. So at household level, we see that the highest effect is the low crop yields, followed by the lack of food and hunger or hunger. And that figure is similar to what we see at the community level, where the most mentioned still is low crop yields, followed by food, lack of food or hunger, food security issues. Then at the country level, we see a higher mention of damage to the roads or the transportation, then followed by the low crop yields, and then still the issue of lack of food or hunger. Those are the key effects that Ugandans see that are caused by, are a result of the climatic or environmental changes. Now, when it comes to the issue of addressing the climate change, what do Ugandans think? We asked a question, what actions can a person take to deal with the negative impacts of climate change? Then we also further asked, what have you personally taken? And I'll just pause for a bit here and ask us in the room. Is there any volunteer who would like to tell me what action they've taken? And I'm not going for any environmentalist. You want to say something? Yes, you look like you want to say something. What action have you taken?
No, I've not taken any action. Apart from making some noise, as we like to say. One of the things, I mean, the action I like is to plant a tree, restore a swamp. But so far what I've done is what has been within my means, should I say in my comfort. I remember, and I'm excited to see Robert, I remember it was the start of 2022, yeah? And they were cutting down those huge trees in Ginger. And I put up a tweet, and I was excited to see this week that actually Robert and his group, they took up the actions, they went to court, and they actually won the case stopping any further cutting of such trees and preserving them. Though unfortunately we've already lost most of them in Gulu. Hopefully you get to preserve the ones in Lira, because I understand that Kitugum Road is coming for them, and they start from here, Lira Hospital all the way up to Komboni College. It's a nice stretch of like 3-4 kilometers. And yeah, so the action I've done is, KCCA, they finished our trees in that Tinder Stretcher Road, made some noise. They said, we are going to plant the trees, we'll restore the varieties the way they are. I pass there every day and I'm here to see. So the action I've taken, nothing. But also, there's something else I've seen. Cases here, they seem to, I don't know if it's Umeme or whatever it is, they cut the trees for the electricity cables or even data cables. I'm like, which one is easier to move? Cut the tree or move the cables? So the action I've taken is make noise.
Okay. That's an action. It's a serious action. A hand clap for him. So, wherever you're seated, just reflect internally. I won't ask you what you've done. You've done something. What did you do? The microphone is all the way here. He's our?
I have actually, I can't say I've done nothing. I've done a lot. Some 5 years ago, I exposed illicit logging in Mount Kay Forest. Some of you don't know it. It is in Yumbe, with some of the best African mahogany. And it's one section that still had such kind of trees, but they were highly sought after in Asia and Dubai. And so logs were coming from that side, go to Namamve, and they are exported or shipped out. Then 5 years ago again, I was in Mabira forest. I risked it all and exposed the illicit logging. Unfortunately, after I had done that, that time the Minister of Environment was Goreti Kitutu. They also organized a press conference and took journalists there to show them how there are still some trees, all right? And I said, who is fooling who? Because I could have seen or shown you 100 stumps of trees. That's how much I can show. I cannot go every corner because it's an expanse of a forest. And I thought as activists and also other entities, NGOs, would take it up. But unfortunately, in most cases it seems I'm fighting alone, you know. They said they are restoring Mabira forest as they still, you know, that illegal cutting of those trees is happening. So you build and demolish, build and demolish. So that's like kind of a scenario. Again, last year, I was in Mabira forest, 5 years after. It's quite an uphill task. I can challenge, no one can do it. I will put my arm, no one. Among my colleagues, no one can go there and do that story. I've gone to the extreme to almost losing my life trying to expose what happens there. But unfortunately, even Parliament, no one even talks about it. It was only once, 5 years ago, when I did that story that, you know, Parliament, people were up in arms saying, you know, we need to protect this forest. So you do that, everybody keeps quiet. So I tend to believe I've done my part in exposing these goons and these adamant authorities. You realize as you're continuing to create awareness that the budget for forestry to protect these forests is so meager. Wildlife Authority, they have a bigger budget because of UWA. They have so many guys on the ground. You find Mabira forest that is so many thousands of square miles or hundreds of square miles. It has like about 10 rangers who are protecting it. So how much can they do? I stopped blaming them and said government lacks
Goodwill?
The goodwill, especially from the top leadership going downwards, to actually protect the environment. Every day you're passing somewhere, you'll find they are encroaching on a swamp. And a musician recently was saying, you're chasing away people from Rubiji, but you gave out Namamve. Namamve used to be a very good wetland. There was a lot. And it's now an industrial park. Go anywhere else in Kampala. All factories are in swamps. When you go to Nema, they say you look at which one, you look at the consequences vis-a-vis the benefits. Now, I don't know how that is calculated. I'm not an expert, but I tend to find that as something very maybe foolish, because you are allowing someone to reclaim a swamp that has existed for generations and putting up a factory and you lose it for good. That business can die anytime, all right? But that swamp, if it is left intact, many would benefit from it. So I've done something, and I'm sure there are other guys maybe who have done something inside here. That's my story.
Thank you, sir, for that. A hand clap. And we're expecting some members of parliament to come in here, so we hope that conversation can still stick. We can pack it somewhere. I wish I had a note to stick those somewhere so that we do not lose them at all. Because our job here today is to bring it home. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for those that have done something, and I hope that it has inspired the rest of us to do something, even in your own compound, back home, or your village. Plant a tree. So when it comes to the Ugandans out there, what action can a person take? Here we see that 52% say that a Ugandan can plant a tree to deal with the negative effects of climate change. In terms of those that have actually done something, 45% say they have gone on to plant a tree. Then we have 36% who say that you can encourage tree protection or planting. And 24% say that they have actually done something. So there are other people like you who pick that example and then go on to encourage others to plant a tree or protect a tree. Then we have 20% who say that they should encourage sustainable agriculture. And 13% have gone on to actually encourage sustainable agriculture. Then to the protection of the wetlands, it's also a suggestion that Ugandans have put across. 18% say that you can protect the wetlands, and 8% say they've actually taken some action. Then we have the 17% who say you can actually pray to God. And then 14% say that they have already taken action. Yeah, they pray, they continue to pray. And here it's not to mock the religious. It's good to pray, but faith always goes with actions. Not so. That's what we were taught in our divinity classes or CRE. Then keep the environment clean. Raise awareness to protect nature. Reduce food wastage. Diversify income sources. And I think this was largely to deal with the shortfalls in terms of livelihoods, low agricultural production, so you can diversify your income sources. That's what Ugandans are saying here. Pardon? We need to finish the food. Yes, finish the food for sure. Then waste reduction and so on. So those are the suggestions that Ugandans have in mind. But when it comes to who is responsible to solve the climate change problem in Uganda, here we see that citizens see this as a shared responsibility. A half, 50% say it's the national government responsible. Then 48% say it's us, the individual, yourself. 48%. Then 29% say it's the local government. I found this a little bit disturbing. And it probably also speaks to what the gentleman at the back mentioned. So I didn't want to say his name. So dear, yeah, I'll call you sir. It speaks to what you mentioned, that sometimes in specific localities, the local government has limited resources to actually take action. And now for the ordinary citizen, only 29% think that local government can actually take action. I think that's a challenge in itself, because local government is closer to us than the national government. They govern the affairs within our localities. Then we have 9% that say the responsibility is God. Then we have other mentions. 6% national NGOs, 4% international NGOs, 4% private sector. Then we have those that say it's the UN and other regional organizations, that is 2%. NEMA, 2%. The head of state, 2%. Developed countries, 2%. And then the National Forestry Authority, 1%. Sometimes when we see figures like a 1% that are saying that it's NFA that is responsible for solving the climate change problem, it could be an issue of awareness in terms of the duties that that agency has to accomplish within the community. So there is a lot that needs to be done. People need to know about NEMA and what their mandate is, what NFA is and what their mandate is. Because if they don't know, how can they even begin to ask for accountability? You always see in the media, government etuyambe. I think people rarely say NEMA etuyambe, not so. Or NFA etuyambe. I think that's rare. Maybe we should have more of that. That is now for the panel to discuss further. Then we asked some statements to understand what Ugandans agree with or disagree with. And here we just wanted to know what are their views on whether climate change is due to human activities or natural causes. When we were starting to collect this data, I just asked a few friends of mine, what do they think the cause is of climate change? Is it natural or human causes? And I was not extremely surprised when more people were saying that it's the natural causes. That is within the circles, my circles. They were saying it's the natural causes. Few people were mentioning the human activities. So in this data here, that was countrywide, and was my own private investigation. Here we see that 60% of Ugandans agree that climate change is just a natural fluctuation in Earth's temperature and weather. 60%. There's a lot of work for Europe to do, eh? In case we need Ugandans to understand that there is more to it. Then we have 51% that strongly disagree that human activities have no significant impact on global temperatures. In other words, for them they say that human activities have significant impact on the global temperatures. So we have a 60% and then a 50%, meaning there are some, maybe a 10% that is in the middle, that they hold both views. For them, they believe it's twofold. It's both the natural and then the human activities. But when you read more, you actually start to understand why the human activities are the causes of climate change, at least according to the science that is out there. But I believe that the experts in the room can expound on that, in case we still have those that are in the middle. Yes. Then here we also have a number of statements. But in summary, 6 out of 10 Ugandans believe that it is not too late to act in addressing climate change. We need to leverage that optimism. They are willing to take action and it's not too late. Then we also see that when it comes to who do they think is to blame for climate change, we see that half of Ugandans are saying that rich countries are to blame for climate change. Now, more to that specific insight, when we look at the global carbon budget report, we see that the climate scientists have stated it clearly that the responsibility for climate change lies almost entirely with the wealthy, industrialized nations. You can look at this figure here from that report that is showing Europe has accumulative CO2 emissions, 542 billion tons. compared to Africa at 51 billion tons. And if we are to go by the science on the issues of carbon emissions and how that affects climate change, then we have an answer here. But I expect the experts to talk more about it, because we cannot take it for granted that Ugandans have taken time to read this. And we can again leverage the media that is here to spread that message further. Now, to the issue of cooking energy. I'm glad that, Violet, you did mention it in your opening remark. Here we asked, what type of energy do Ugandans use in their homes for cooking? And we see that 80% say that it's firewood that is mainly used for cooking. Then 18% say that it is charcoal. So the question we'll ask here, okay, if it's firewood, pardon? Charcoal is kind of processed. Somebody asked what's the difference between firewood and charcoal. Charcoal is processed, firewood is raw. And I believe that there's a difference and some kind of effect when you're using either of the two. I'm hoping that somebody can expound further on that. We have people here from Kano who can talk about that as well. I was convinced in one of the meetings I attended earlier in the year, the passion with which they explain the climate change. I believe you'd also be sold on what actually this is. Then when it comes to electricity, back to our slide here, 1% say that they use electricity. Then 1% mentioned bottled gas, 1% kerosene. Then there are others. In terms of the type of stove that is used, most Ugandans, 69%, are using that traditional stove, the 3 stones, masiga. That's what most Ugandans are using in their households for cooking. And then 20% are using the charcoal stove. When we go to the different regions, I'll interest you to look at the Greater Kampala, Central Region, Eastern, Northern, and Western. 78% of the households in Greater Kampala are using charcoal as their main type of energy for cooking. And that speaks to the issue of the demand and supply. So if at all the charcoal is coming from northern Uganda and you people in Kampala are willing to pay for it, who is there to stop that trade? Or what are the alternatives? If at all you are saying that maybe let's stop using charcoal, what are the viable alternatives? I've heard in the past, I've read somewhere that the government of Uganda was promoting the use of LPG, the gas. But the target I read was, I think they were targeting 1 million households. Currently, I think the census, the recent census, was mentioning that we have about 10 million households. So is that target of 1 million enough to enable the energy transition? That is something that still puzzles me. Then lastly, when we think about the transition to maybe clean energy, use of clean energy for cooking in the household, we try to dig for more data from our database to understand what proportion of households already own a gas stove or electric stove. Because we are told consistently, move from charcoal, move from firewood, and use something else. So I'm thinking that ideally would be gas or electricity. You can guide us. That is what I'm thinking. So if at all we are to have Ugandans migrate to gas and electricity, currently only 4% of the households in Uganda own a gas or electric stove. Only 4%. And we know those things are expensive. So a lot needs to be done. It's really an uphill task. And most of these are in the urban and the richer households. Before I conclude, I want to welcome Honorable Kaya. Since I have the microphone, I'll use this opportunity. We missed you in the other half of the presentation. There were some pertinent issues that we feel you could probably speak to. So now let me conclude. Uganda's vulnerability to climate change. Uganda is positioned along the equator. And we have low income. And we rely on climate-sensitive agricultural economic activities. So climate change definitely poses a significant threat to the livelihoods of millions of Ugandans. Any slight change, we will suffer. Because we've already known that more than 70% of Ugandans are into agricultural activities. Then my second point, as we conclude, the issue of the concern and perception. Ugandans express high concern about climate change. Despite the uncertainty around the causes, we saw that people seem to be split. However, they emphasize the need to share the responsibility in mitigating and adapting to the changes that are brought about by climate change. And some of the strategies that they put in place, or they say they are actually taking action on, are tree planting. They also believe in wetland protection as a key strategy. My third point, on the issue of urgency for action. So despite the different demographic differences, there is a consensus among Ugandans that climate change is an immediate issue that actively impacts their lives. Transitioning Ugandans, however, from firewood to alternative cooking energy sources will be challenging. However, this is necessary. In this point here, you see that we are clearly seeing that climate change is not a topic for the elite in conferences out there. It's a topic for us, each and every one of us. Then lastly, in terms of responsibility and action, while citizens acknowledge the responsibility of wealthy industrialized nations for causing climate change, they advocate for the shared responsibility between government and citizens in addressing the crisis. We therefore need coordinated and sustained efforts at household level, community level, national level, and global level to urgently address this crisis. Because yes, it may look like it's quite late, but it's not too late to actually take action. With that, I want to thank you so much for giving me your attention and for listening to the views of the citizens out there. This data is available on our website. You can freely use it. If there are some of you that are studying your master's, your PhD, this data you can easily utilize. It has all the RB approvals that are necessary to have it utilized in any space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. The question still stands. What have you done in your own space and in your capabilities? What have you done? Okay. So we, as mentioned earlier on, we have a gentleman here who knows how to tickle people more than I can. I think he has the right words to use when asking. So I will concede, or I will give away my seat for him so that he can invite his team of members here who can digest for us more the field of the discussion. So allow me to invite Joseph Beyanga to come here and invite his team for a discussion. I'm sure we'll learn more from the discussion and try to put some of the findings into context. Joseph, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How are you? There's something that just took my attention as she was concluding. Very few households in Uganda own a gas or electric stove. Across the whole country, just 1 out of 20 households, 4%, own a gas or electric stove, rising to 1 out of 10, 11% in urban areas. What do we use for cooking at home? What do we use for cooking at home? It's a point for reflection. Think about the nice meal you had yesterday evening, the other day, over the weekend as you hosted guests at home. What did you use for cooking? Yesterday we had the minister talking about how much money they are putting aside to popularize the use of gas, LPG gas, yeah? Before that, last year, in the last budget, there was also money put aside for that. My friends in the media, you remember, I don't remember how much money it was, and I think the deal was given to one of the fuel companies. If I'm not mistaken, I saw some of those gas containers at Starbucks. But how many, does anybody know any household that received one of those gas? Those are some of the things we need to think about as we dig into the questions of our environment, our future. And me, I really don't understand them very much, but I know someone who has done some work around it. He is an environmentalist. This week he won a case in Jinja, you know, protecting those nice huge trees, the ones which were planted by Semeika Kungulu. That's over 100 years ago. You need to revise Ugandan history and understand who Semeika Kungulu was. Apparently he planted those trees in almost every city, every town, every region. In Sauti they are there. They used to be there. I don't know if they are still existing. In Lira we still have them on that Kitugumu road. In Gulu, most of them were finished. And in Jinja, they were on the verge of dying. And in the West, I don't know who planted them. I don't think he planted the ones in Imbarara. They are there in Kamkuzi. Actually, it's eucalyptus called Imbaguta. The Imbaguta, you know, that variety, yeah. And one gentleman has been at the center of fighting to make sure we preserve those trees, and we are privileged to have him in the room today to discuss this report and more. Ladies and gentlemen, put our hands together as we welcome Mr. Robert Turiachira. Please, you're welcome. That seat there is reserved for you. Also in the house, we have a member of parliament. She's a gender activist, a former forestry officer in Chiboga district, coordinator for the Parliamentary Forum on Climate Change, a member of Green Climate Fund Designated Authority Committee. So many big things. If you can say anything, she's on the front line of fighting to make sure this climate change, whatever we are seeing, is reversed. Honorable Christine Kaya. 3 names. You're welcome, Honorable. Guys, welcome, Honorable. I like the colors of your dress. It's Equatorial Guinea? South. And when it rains, we know what happens in South Sudan. Just like what we've been experiencing around the Choga area, around the Victoria Basin area. There are some schools which are not yet open because it rained. And when it rained, it flooded, and they are still stuck. We are also privileged to have with us a principal agriculture officer, Minister of Agriculture. She's an experienced senior officer with a demonstrated history of working in the food production industry. Skilled in BRC, that's what I'm here to find out what it means, frozen food management, food processing, and vegetables. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together and welcome Madam Imelda Kazova. When we are talking and when we are seeing the things that are happening in this report, one of the things that have been adversely affected is food production. I stay in a community which it's urban, but you know we still have people who do a bit of backyard farming, and others are still doing farming. There's a piece of land, you know, as I turn into going home, year after year, they always had an awesome harvest of maize. This year round, Marie, if you conducted the research, I think in May, June, you definitely have different results. We saw what happened with the rains in most of Uganda. The rains, instead of coming in March, they showed up in April, and then they were trickles. After very few days, they were gone. And we see a lot of maize drying before it actually gets to the maturing point. So we don't know what that means. Food in a few days. But me, I can talk for 3 years. But I would like to welcome our panelists. I think there's a button somewhere on those microphones. You press it and you say good morning. Oh, was that again? We need to eliminate it. Okay. Is that feedback? We may need to borrow another microphone. Just leave that one. Let's use this for now, and as we find out what that could be. Please, Robert, you can go ahead and introduce yourself. And okay, tap on it again. Okay, hold it there. Ladies and gentlemen, this man, Sudhir, has talked about entering Mavera Forest. I mean, that documentary, I even still remember where I was seated when I was watching it. And there's another gentleman who has been at the front line, you know, writing every day, writing. I used to think of he was a what? Then I discovered he's one of us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Senior Gerard Tenua. But Gerard, don't tell us many stories that scare us. Tell us things that we can go back home and eat. You know, at times when you listen to environmentalists, you wonder, this matoke which was cut down, couldn't it have been preserved to, you know, take care of the environment? You're welcome. Robert, quickly, just 2 minutes. You can use 1.5 if you are really nice. What are your what stuck out for you as the report was shared?
Okay. Thank you so much. I am happy that you called Joseph, because I was going to call him myself. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and others in the room. My name is Robert Turiachira. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Environment Shield. As he talked about the case that we are fresh from, I don't call it winning, because you know, you don't go to court to win, but you want to amplify the voice for the voiceless. This time the trees that don't have the voice. So as the Environment Shield, we went to the High Court of Uganda in Jinja and filed a case where the company that was procured by the Jinja City Council to expand the road in Jinja City, they wanted to cut down over trees that are over 100 mivre trees, to cut them down. But we felt that that is not fair, so we went to court through our lawyers, the Kiza and Mugisha Advocates, Counsel Aaron Chiza, So me, alongside the legendary Gawaya Tegure, we went to court to challenge that. And I'm very happy to say this morning that we got a very, very, very powerful ruling from the doctor, his led Justice Nabisinde, that said that those trees should be preserved because are part of the heritage. As you said, they were planted by the historical Semeka Kunguru. But also those who have been following, as Environment Shield and myself, we are on the front end for the battle against the takeover of Bugoma Forest. You are aware that in 2021, in 2020-2021, a company called Hoima Sugar Limited secured a certificate to go and raise down that part of the forest. But we first went to the High Court of Uganda to challenge that action, but did not succeed. And I said, I will not stop there. I can continue to push the struggle. And right now, I'm at the East African Court of Justice, challenging that action, because environmental issues are not just national issues, but they're also regional issues. So using the law to try and reverse these trends, actually part of the answer that my sister Marie asked, that what are you doing? Yes, we are doing that action as an organization, but also as individuals. We are trying to see how we can explore the legal avenues to try and see that we avert these issues, but also protect the right that Maria talked about, Article 39, the right to a clean and healthy environment. What she did not also emphasize is the Article 17, which talks about the duties of the citizen. It clearly states that every citizen has a right to create and protect a right to a clean and healthy environment. So every right comes with responsibility. So we have a duty to try and do that. So I am happy that this report has actually come out today because it is very timely. First of all, you also the recent heat wave that swept through Sudan and moved down through northern Uganda, went through Chiriandong and came here in Kampala. By the time the South Sudan closed the schools, in Adjumani it was at 41 degrees Celsius. In Chiriandong it was 39 degrees. In Kampala it was as high as 36 degrees. So we were all burning. So to the title of the planet is already burning, yes, it is burning because of the issues that are really affecting us. So what I want to answer that seems to be quite clear that comes out in the report is what causes climate change. Yes, as she said, majority of the respondents are saying it is caused by natural causes, but the climate scientists, and I would like to encourage all of us to look out for a book called The Climate Book, which is the latest book that compiles over 100 climate scientists that are talking about issues of climate change. So the number one cause of climate change is the burning of greenhouse gases, the burning of fossil fuels, which emit greenhouse gases that form a blanket on the planet that prevents the heat that is supposed to be escaping into the atmosphere and keeps on the earth, and therefore causing the global warming. So that is the number one cause. But of course, talking about the human-induced activities, it is true that the planet has been continuously going through the natural causes, the natural processes. But we see that the human activities have exacerbated or have actually worsened an already bad situation. And that is why, in a sense, they are called anthropogenic forces that are causing or worsening the climate change.
Robert, today I'll go back home and use the dictionary.
Yes, so there are two critical issues. Number one, as she highlighted, the issue of our forest cover, that our forest cover has been declining. In Uganda in particular, by 1990, we had 24% of the forest cover. But that has since gone down to just 8%. Of course, we've got reports from NEMA recently that because of that has gone up to 13% because of the work that all of us are doing in this room to try and promote, agroforestry and plantation forestry. But also the wetland encroachment. In the last 15 years alone, we've lost the wetland cover from 15% to just 11.5%. And it shows, the projection shows that if we don't reverse the trend, we are likely to lose more wetland. Now, when the wetlands are the filters, they help in holding the water that would actually cause the flooding. So the activities that we are doing, because the population is increasing, Right now, I don't know what census is saying, but it had been estimated we are about 48 million Ugandans. We are adding a lot of pressure. Globally, we are 8 billion people, so the pressure that we are exerting on the population, the settlement patterns, we are adding a lot of pressure on nature, and to that extent, nature is also trying to fight back, and that is why we are seeing these effects coming through all through globally. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Honorable, I know you came in when the presentation was midway or three-quarter gone, but from what you heard, what are your key impressions from the report, from the findings?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I think this one is more. This is more gender friendly.
Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. You forgot the most important.
Which one?
Title. I'm the Shadow Minister for Water and Environment. I belong to the National Unity Platform, led by Chagulanyi Honorable Sentam.
Acknowledged.
So, I thank you very much for the research. When I got the invitation, it had some of the findings within the. Those are very few invitations where you try to get the hint of the research findings. So thank you very much for that innovation. Some people invite us. In the invitation, there is nothing to do with the title. In the mail, please find attached. Still in the mail, there's nothing completely related. So we thank you very much for your invitation. It had some summary of the findings. So it was guiding us on the preparation for what we are going to say and what we are going to share with you. And first of all, I tried to look at some of the findings, the few findings. Forestry has taken lead in your findings. That is very, very, very important. And then the issue of climate change, a change in over 30 years in weather patterns. So which ones are weather patterns? And then you have also tried to bring it out that much as you struggle to get the necessities, climate change as if has 80% of the contribution to what you receive. So bringing that out is very important because in this era, whatever you want to request the government to give you, if you don't align it to insecurity, probably when people don't have food, they can take your seat. That is when people wake up. Thank you very much for bringing that one as well. You were also trying to show ownership of property related to renewable energy. And that one is also very important. Because if you ask all of us, me personally, you very well know that I'm very passionate about climate change. But it ashames for me to air it out here that I still have a bag of charcoal in a corner of my kitchen, the whole of me. Now you will ask yourselves if Kaya, that advocate we know, has a bag of charcoal in the corner of her kitchen. What about you? What about others? So that is a big challenge. Now you'll ask me why does Kaya still have that bag of charcoal? Those are the questions now we need to ask ourselves. Why don't you completely depend on electricity and gas? Now those are the questions we need to start responding to. Then the other issue. Yaka. You will bring those ones later now. And because we are reading your research, but we must also recommend further research. Isn't that the order of research? Yes. As you, in your conclusion, yes. I have found out this, but next time find out this. So we want more research on why we have failed. And then we raise up those issues for everybody to respond to. And if we cannot respond to those, then we better stop preaching the gospel, because we shall be talking for nothing. But members, we need to also remind ourselves about the definition of climate change. The change in weather patterns over 30 years. And the weather patterns, we're talking about sunshine, we're talking about rainfall, temperature. Those are the things we're talking about. So these are the issues of changes in agricultural yield, changes in soil fertility. Those are effects after the change in weather. So, Twaheza, we still want those change to our weather. We still want those changes, researching those changes for us to completely talk about climate change. It is good you have brought out the changes depicted by the effects, but the real weather patterns, we want to see if in 1980 we used to get rainfall amounting to this. Over 30 years, what are we receiving? If it used to rain in March, when is it raining now? How long were the rains, for example? So we are requesting for more research, such that when we also go to other policymakers, we are able to show these changes. Otherwise, people are seeing a lot of effects as a result of the changes. So, in climate change, here and globally, we are now emphasizing on two sections of addressing climate change, and one of them is climate change adaptation. We have agreed that there is a change. Now, how do we remain in whatever we have been doing with this change? That is the most important thing. How are you going to maintain your agricultural productivity with this change? So, we cannot just say, oh, we are doomed, we are finished. Let me keep quiet about this, I am finished. No, we must come up with solutions. And those are the ones we call adaptation. And then mitigation is very important. Mitigation is after 3 items. 1, establishing sinks. Now that we have destroyed our ozone layer and we have emitted a lot of greenhouse gases, we can establish sinks, first of all, to curb the emissions. Or the second one can be to reduce what we are emitting. Whoever is doing any activity, be cognizant of the emissions, reduce. Then there can also be mechanisms of managing pollution or waste management, such that what has been ejected, at least there is a way, it is confused not to reach the what? The carbon, I mean the ozone layer. So there are 3 items. When you look at this year's Environment Day, the one that we celebrated of recent, 5th June, the focus was too much on disaster management, waste management, because we have realized that even when you have planted a lot of trees, in our study, I mean in our advocacy, we call it net zero. There are people who want it like that. That, are you emitting a lot? Yes. Have you established sinks that can equally swallow what you have emitted? Yes. Then we are done. Let's remain there. There are some people who are like, let's be net zero. But net zero, you may do it, another may not do it. It is like getting 50% in an examination. You are not counted among, you are half full, you are half empty. That situation is also not good. So we are saying that the sinks established should be more than what we pollute. Let's not be at the other net zero scenario. That is why we are even bringing in issues of I don't know if my colleagues support it. Making ecocide a crime. I am with the international bodies to ensure that ecocide is like, genocide. You remember the Rwandese genocide? So we are saying that if you also cause a lot of environmental destruction, that is ecocide, let it be a crime internationally, and after the international ratification, we bring it to our national level. Because as Uganda, we are progressing into a lot of investments. We need to put some buffers for the investors that are coming, such that they know if you pollute, if you destroy the environment to certain levels, you are convicted. That one is very important. So, why is it that deforestation? Thank you very much for bringing out the deforestation part. And afforestation, anything to do with the forestry is very important, because it addresses the two gaps when we're talking about adaptation. How can you stay in this harsh environment? If you plant a tree, you will still survive. But it also does a lot on mitigation, because internationally, globally, it has been proved that forests are the best sinks. Wetlands become next, but forests, can you imagine, trees are better than us in curbing emissions. So forests are the best sinks. So forests address the gaps in adaptation, but also address the gaps in mitigation. I would end by giving some few solutions that we are looking out for. And in the next research, members here should focus a lot on the actions we have planned to do. In most of the policy documents, we have the National Determined Contributions, we have the Climate Change Act, which even compels our budgets to be compliant. But now, what is the gap? Many men have left women in primary production. You try to assess. I don't say that because I'm a woman, then I must. And because I'm a woman, member of parliament, then. No, but most men have run away from primary production of everything. So, any actions must focus more on women, because they are the ones we have left there. Wherever I go, I tell people that you will stay on your meals, maize meals, rice meals. You will wait for nothing. Time is coming when you will stand at your meal waiting for maize, and it will not be coming. So we have to go back. So many have left women there. So issues to do with pricing of primary products, pricing of agricultural products. Look at beef products. How much is that? A lot of theft is there. Women don't earn equivalent to what they invest, and so they cannot have money to reinvest in some of these proven practices. And so that is why even men ran away. They saw the things were not paying. They better sell the land and get borders. Now borders, I don't know, they are also being chased out of Kampala. I don't know, maybe they will come back. But in the meantime, engaging in agriculture, implementing all the proven practices is becoming very expensive. You don't break even. So we have to address the issue of pricing, primary production, and looking at technologies that are most suitable to women. In our budget that was read yesterday, I was very happy to see that they have allocated money for disaster preparedness. It is called what? Disaster preparedness, not aid, not taking flour to some people, blankets, and then counterfeit blankets that people use for 3 nights and they are torn. So that business is not the item they put in the budget. What they put was preparedness. So we believe that preparedness should address some of our issues. Climate change management. Let's plant trees. Let's plan for waste management. Let's those solutions. So whoever, my friend, from the Ministry of Agriculture, you should get part of that money to prepare. And then associations for climate actions. When we come to growing of other crops, vanilla association, what? association. Even handicraft has a lot of association with women. But when we come to climate actions, for example, in your place, how many associations grow trees? That is tree growing association, where are they? Most of the organic manure making associations, climate actions must also, I think the most popular one is beekeeping, at least. But the rest of the actions, they are no associations. And so individual, why is it that the rest of the actions attract associations, cooperatives? You look at PDM, how many enterprises were climate friendly under PDM? Even in Myoga even didn't have anything to do with climate smart enterprises. So we need to also focus on that and advocate that our Climate Change Act gets regulations, and then encourage private tree growers. When you look at the information that we have, it is only 24% of the forests that are managed under NFA, Central Forest Reserves. 24%. Over 48 something is by private. So when we don't focus on private, and under private, they are religious institutions, cultural institutions. All of us come from cultural institutions. But these days there are some people who want to develop that culture. When I ask you, where do you come from? Where is your burial place? These days people take you as somebody who is insane when you ask such questions. They even say, are you gender sensitive? Can you imagine? What happened? Why shouldn't? So what we are saying is that the private investment in forests and then costing the forest products is very important, such that our people know that if I invest in forestry, I can be able to pay school fees, offset my livelihood options like this. But if that is not there, we are heading into problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. She came prepared. Madam Imelda. Madam Imelda, you are welcome.
Thank you.
You saw the report?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Just briefly, if you just tell us, what are your quick impressions? What stood out for you that you think, yes, this one, akatelekeka?
Thank you. I will introduce myself again because you didn't pronounce my name very well.
Oh.
I'm Kanzomba Imelda from the Ministry of Agriculture and Industry and Fisheries. And I'm also a climate change focal person and gender, but also a negotiator at the UNFCCC for agriculture for Uganda. So I think we are always with her. That's why she was always referring to me. So what stood out, to me, there was nothing very new because these things have always been happening. And why they do happen is because of our increasing population, because people have to feed. And that's why you see there's a lot of land use from forestry to agriculture. And when we were calculating the greenhouse gas emissions for some sectors, agriculture had the highest because of that, turning the land use change for agriculture use due to increased population. But also we cannot underlook the fact that we have to take into consideration food security. And as we negotiate with G7 and China, all those countries, most of our economies depend on agriculture. And formerly they used not to negotiate on agriculture, but later they found out that they couldn't leave it out. And as she has already said that we, whose economies depend on agriculture, we are taking forward mostly agriculture adaptation or climate change adaptation. Because it's already with us, we cannot fail to eat, because each of you here, at least most of you have already eaten something. But without taking into food security as a serious issue, we may not be there. So climate change is there, but how do we live with it? In this phase of climate change, where we have to really eat and also preserve or conserve the environment so that we can really reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So what I saw with climate change, what was standing out, well, all these things, to me, they were a little bit obvious because I've seen them happen. One of them, we have a lot of emerging new pests and diseases, and this is due to climate change. You heard of the fall armyworm, which was throwing a lot of maize, the locusts, which had come after a very long time.
At least those ones, we stoned them away.
Okay, but those are also because as a result of climate change. We have had floods, and the floods, when there are floods, obviously crops can't grow. There are a lot of post-harvest losses because of climate variability. You're not sure when it's going to rain, and your crop is ready for harvest. You cannot harvest because the rain is too much, and we have a lot of post-harvest losses, and hence we have a lot of hunger. We need really food, which is not really catered for because it is not predictable. But also, we have loss of soil fertility, which was also highlighted in the report, because with a lot of those erratic rains, they take out the topsoil. That is simple science. And the topsoil is the most fertile because there's a lot of humus. So in the end, soil fertility is lost. So this thing of cutting the forest, people are also looking for virgin land, a little bit fertile. You know, in East Africa, Uganda is the one of the countries that use a lot less fertilizers. So we have been depending on the natural fertility. But we forget that as we get the crops, we plant each year, we are removing those nutrients from the soil, and we don't really take them back. So you find even if you planted 10 acres and the soil is depleted of its nutrients, you cannot get the yield that you would have got. So we really need to work on our soils because we have to feed them as they feed us. And then I also looked on the report. I also saw drought. That I looked at it as a little bit obvious because as you cut the trees, what do you expect? That's what I'm saying. To me, everything looked like it was supposed to be there because of the changes that have happened. But as agriculture, we are advocating for climate-smart agriculture, and we are trying to do some initiatives to see that we are promoting solar-powered irrigation for smallholder farmers, and we are trying to help farmers to reduce on using the fossil fuels. That's why we are saying solar-powered. If you use solar-powered, there's a project we have been promoting almost now all over the country, that if you use solar, the government will contribute for you 75%, and you contribute 25%, and they install for you the small-scale irrigation system on your farm. And if you're going to use fossil fuels, as in diesel, you pay the 75%, and then government pays 25%. That is in a way of trying to reduce the emissions. Another thing we are doing also, we are trying to advocate for agriculture insurance with different partners, because nobody wants to venture into agriculture insurance or agricultural business because it's really very, very risky. And given, it used to be very risky, but now given the times of climate change, it's really very risky. So we are trying to advocate for agriculture insurance so that people can venture into agriculture and they're not worried of the variability caused by climate change and other things. But also, Minister of Agriculture with Minister of Water and Environment and other partners who are trying to develop the carbon market regulations and guidelines to do what she was telling us, the mitigation bit. It's a long way. It may not take effect now, but actually in the country there are people dealing already in carbon markets, though that information does not flow as it's supposed to. There are other companies, but as Minister of Agriculture also, we have some structures in place where we developed the National Adaptation Plan for Agriculture sector. And it's only the agriculture sector that has a National Adaptation Plan, as per now. I think we even don't have a National Adaptation Plan for Uganda. So we moved ahead, though we haven't implemented it because of funds, but we moved ahead. We were seeing ahead of everything. And everybody, I would say, because Minister of Water is taking charge of the National Adaptation Plan, they are soon starting to develop it, but for us, we developed ours in 2018. And as she has also said, we have the NDC, the Nationally Determined Contribution for Uganda, where agriculture is also was highlighted, and we have also initiatives that we put in there. But it stands to be seen whether these will be implemented, because our country has really to take charge and finance some of these initiatives to make sure that all these things take place, and then we can be able to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and hence climate change effects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imelda. She spoke and said so many things. And as you hand over the microphone to Gerard, I'm just wondering, Gerard, as you give your quick impression about the report, how come we don't know about these things, you people in the media?
First, I'll speak about my impressions on the report. The report is very rich, and it points to two areas. One of them is the concerns, the outstanding concerns which we have in this country. One of them is destruction of the environment, and just like the Honorable mentioned earlier, the biggest resource that is accessible, that is in our faces, these are the forests and the trees which we cut down for charcoal, firewood, and etc. etc. The second one is about inequalities. You hear about those small percentages of people accessing gas, electricity. How do they access their power? And of course, it goes without question. That is why the environment is disappearing. Then the other one was on the part of the actions which we are taking as a country to address those concerns. We're either jumping halfway or quarter way, close to the ground, and which is painful. A few trees planted here and there, others blaming it on God and taking no action. And then, of course, the submissions which came from the floor from my brother Sudil. The moment you go to places like Mabira, for me that is like a case study of where the whole ball game is being played. The moment communities or the different stakeholders cannot ask for answers and get them, that's where the trouble begins. And that's why we have these concerns. If you investigate those cases Sudil is talking about, you will find that at the end of the pipeline, there's a soldier, there's a top guy in government, there's the duty bearers who should be checking the malpractice. They are part of the game. And once you don't have those tenets of sustainable development addressed, accountability issues, participation in those decisions, then you are going to have resources like Mabira cut down. And that is part of the continuous struggle in the room. Why do we, as journalists, don't write or know about these things? We know them, but of course you can't offload all these things in one go. You are complaining about my brother who was talking about anthropogenic blah blah, and you said you needed another class to understand all these things. To go back to the issue at hand, I think it goes back to the media or the journalists, unfortunately, because I believe they are the only people who still have the power to move this country to another level, to keep highlighting these issues. And they can closely work with civil society to come up with a communication strategy that can keep on highlighting these issues, conscientizing this country, asking the hard questions. For me, I think that is where the more ball should be played, because all these malpractices will happen because of the power relations. All these resources we have, the forests, the wetlands, put them on this table. Once you tilt it, they will flow in a certain direction. And that is why you'll have a certain X building in the middle of the swamp. A certain X is in charge of trading in Affizeria Africana, which brings a lot of money, but to individuals. And the guys who are in northern Uganda or Western Nile, where it is coming from, they are getting 30,000, 50,000 for one log which is going to fill a trailer. And it still goes back to inequalities and those power imbalances. We need to keep questioning these things. We need to learn fast as the media. We need to know more about this, the climate change, the impacts, all those principles, the concepts around it, precautionary principle, name it, because they'll be very useful in terms of asking for accountability, but in a very simple language. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Guys, a round of applause to our panelists. And as the discussion goes on, I would encourage us to, if you have a question, please note it down, so when it comes a session where asking questions, you are on the go and you don't take forever to formulate the question. We'd like this to be as interactive as we can be. Robert, I come to you. In your CV, there's youth and all that. And you've heard from people, yes, there's population growth. That's the reality. People need to get jobs. So we need to cut down, set up factories. We need to get rid of the wetlands. Is this thing, how can we sustainably use our environment, use our land, use our resources to set up factories? How can we sustainably do this thing while taking care of our environment?
Thank you so much, Joseph. First of all, I want to salute Ndugu Tenywa for the very good work that he's doing at New Vision, especially on climate reporting. And I would like to encourage all the members of the Fourth Estate to always mainstream environment and climate change issues. I know that, as Maria said, this may sound quite technical and not very attractive stories, but these are issues that are dealing with our daily lives. We are talking about an existential threat that we should actually give headlines other than being given the footnote stories. About the youth, I want to comment about the demographic dynamics within the climate change discussion. It is true that, and the report also highlighted when it showed that over 65% of the people who are reporting about climate change were women, and then 74 were men. And Maria raised the issue of how aware are women, and of course vis-a-vis the youth. The climate change movement globally is actually powered by young people. If you see that the people who are really speaking out about issues of climate change are actually young people, especially like here in Uganda, you talk about voices from people from the Fridays for the Future, whether Vanessa Nakate or any other climate activists out there. Because to them, young people, climate change really their personal issues, their future at stake. And I'm happy. Personally, I've been trying to encourage as many young people to come out and speak out about some of these issues. But of course, we must also understand the underlying challenges that we face, and the report partly talks about some of them, and it recommends the shared responsibility that we all must undertake. Yes, for us as civil society organizations, we are trying to do what we are trying to do within our means. And of course, Twaweza has demonstrated that, you can do something with even little resources. Try to actually do this, the activity they have taken. Personally, I chair the working committee for environmental rights defenders, the network that brings together environmental human rights defenders, and also trying to look at the work that most of these organizations actually bring on the ground. And most of these organizations actually, they are youth-led and youth-serving organizations. But of course, civil society organizations cannot work alone. As Honorable Christine has said, we must engage institutions of government. For example, we've seen the report showing that organizations like institutions like NEMA and NFA, they are attracting just 1%, 2%. So it means that the people on the ground don't even know about them. So we need to engage these institutions. But of course, for example, an institution like Parliament of Uganda, I'm happy that we're supposed to have members of Parliament, but of course disappointed that many of them didn't turn up, but have been represented by the Honorable Christine Kaya. The Parliament of Uganda is the people's house. They are representative of the people. And there are two powerful committees at Parliament, the Natural Environment and Natural Resources Committee and the Climate Change Committee. So such committees, we must leverage them. And like, for example, last year I had the opportunity of presiding over the first ever Environment Parliament, where we had citizens on one side and the sitting members of Parliament on one side discussing these issues. So we must take advantage of Parliament, but also the legal and institutional framework is an advantage, but also a challenge, because she talked about the National Climate Change Act and she talked about the guidelines. In 2021, when we were pushing for the legislation of the National Climate Change Act, we had hope that it was going to be expedited. And I can tell you, Joseph, that under Section 30 of the Act, there's a provision that the minister shall actually come up with guidelines and regulations to operationalize the Act. But 3 years down the road, we don't have those regulations. And we have the Act, very good provisions, but we cannot implement it, as we would want to go to court and actually take on people who are violating and causing climate injustice. You can't breathe life into it. You can only use the National Environment Act, but the National Climate Change Act is there. It doesn't have the regulation to operationalize it. So the challenge we have is that we treat environment and climate change issues as if they are really things of the future, yet they are really already with us. And that's a big challenge on the institution of parliament, but also in the government institutions. Then the bit that I would like to talk about that came out that I would like to talk about is the issue of climate finance. And my sister Imelda has talked about the negotiations.
Before you go to climate finance,
yes.
I was asking a specific question. We have a huge number of youth,
yes.
and you hear every day the president saying we need jobs for these people, justifying encroachment on environment, on swamps and all that to set up factories.
Yes.
How can we do the two?
Well, I want to tie that together with the issue of the climate finance, because the other issue also that we have faced as people on the front line of climate change is the tendency of highlighting so much on the negatives other than talking about the positives, because the youth want to look at for opportunities. And of course, under climate change, and I'm happy that Madam Emerita talked about what the Minister of Water and Environment is undertaking, the carbon trade regulations. The contestation we have, for example, I want you to look at the NDC framework, our National Climate Contribution of 2030. It talks about the opportunities that we have to tap as a country. And we have committed ourselves as a country that by 2030, we shall reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 24.7%. But for us to do that, we need to mobilize about $28.1 billion. So if you're going to rally, the youth and bring these issues to them, for them to understand, because when you talk about the youth, most of them, you're talking about the Gen Zs. These are people who are in TikTok, they are in the digital spaces. For them, they don't want to hear about the negative vibe. They want to hear about the positive vibe, things that bring, life to them, and talk about, the things in the language they understand. And of course, it also goes back to what Tenua talked about, the reporting. We are talking about these issues. As long as we use these technical terms, they may not understand them. They want to see things that the memes, the reels that are really talking to them, so they can be able to associate with the issue. But the issue of climate financing is an opportunity, because globally we have 5 funds that we need to align ourselves as a country, because if we're going to respond to these issues, there's no way we're going to respond to them unless we actually have the money. And that's why Madam Viro talked about the issue of the budget, where 5.5 billion Uganda shillings were earmarked in capitalizing the UDB to try and see how we can popularize, for example, the LPG and all that. So at the global level, we have the Green Climate Fund, which is now capitalized with $10.5 billion. So how do we align ourselves as a country, for example, under the Ministry of Finance, in the Climate Finance Unit, to see that we tap this money, to see that we provide the green jobs that our young people, the youth, actually need? Because we talk about unemployment, climate change comes as an opportunity to create smart, clean jobs for our young people and try to address the issue of unemployment. We have, for example, the Adaptation Fund, because we in the Global South, in Africa, and Uganda in particular, we are focusing on adaptation, because we talk about climate-smart agriculture. That is under adaptation. So how do we tap? For example, we have $785 million in the Adaptation Fund. How do we tap that fund to bring it down and create the opportunities for our young people? But also the crux of the matter, that we have a competitive advantage about, for example, Uganda as a part of Africa, which is biodiversity rich. We must focus on the biodiversity fund, because when you talk about the youth, they can actually go into the eco-friendly opportunities, for example, like ecotourism. When you talk about restoring and conserving the wetland, unless you explain to this youth who is jobless and try to talk about the advantage of actually restoring and conserving this wetland, that person can actually do ecotourism, then you'll not be able to tap into their mind. For them, they must survive. They must find a way of surviving. The reason why we have failed to combat deforestation, and it remains just something we're talking about and we're not really combating it, is that, number one, the natural forests, which we are actually are having as a country, they are under threat. Talking about Bugoma forests, talking about Mabira forests that Ndugu Sudira has talked about, issues of Budongo forests. You need to take interest in people in the media. Zoka forest in Ajumani, it is under attack. There are people there trying to fight for it. There's friends of Zoka to try and fight for Bugoma forest. It is under attack. So we find ourselves that we are giving away the natural forests, but we are promoting tree planting vis-a-vis tree growing, but at the same time when we are losing our natural forest cover. And talk about natural forest cover, talk about the ecosystem, our biodiversity. The triple planetary crisis capitalized under climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. It shows that if we lose the natural forest, we are losing over 200,000 species of our biodiversity, which are under threat to extinction due to the loss of the natural ecosystems.
Thank you very much, Robert. Let me come to Merida. You talked about a huge population and that nothing shocked you. You know, we have a huge population to feed, but the soils are no longer yielding the way they used to do. Yes. The realities are, and Honorable Kaya said, people will be waiting at the meals and nothing is showing up. When she said people waiting at the meals and nothing showing up, what came to my mind was a picture of me waiting at the dinner table, waiting for a meal and it doesn't show up. People are hungry, you people. You people, you are here speaking English. People are hungry. People have to produce, they have to feed families. So they'll cut down that swamp, if that's the only place they can grow their potatoes and yams. Yeah. People eat food. How are we going to feed the young? And you hear the excellence saying we need a big market. So we are to produce. What do? How do we use the Uganda? I mean, specific. The size is not going to change. How do we use it sustainably?
Okay, thank you. As in the ministry, I will go back still. We have a program, Sustainable Land Management, trying to show people how to manage their land and use it sustainably. Trying to show them soil and water conservation, the structures that they do so that they can harvest water for their gardens. And these are some of the simple technologies. Some of them we have been doing them, but unknowingly. There is a lot of wealth of knowledge with our farmers, and we just have to help them. One of the things I told you that the NDC highlights for agriculture is climate smart agriculture. I only mentioned about the solar irrigation, but we also have for livestock. I didn't talk about livestock because agriculture is livestock, fisheries, and so on. We are advocating for aquaculture. We are, because the number of fish is also reducing because they are getting everyday fish and there's no fish. Fish doesn't grow even when there are floods and the waters increase. Some of those the breeding areas for fish go down and the fish die. So we are advocating for aquaculture, climate smart agriculture in the crop subsector, in the fishery subsector, and in the livestock. And the livestock, we are trying to tell our farmers to get improved breeds because the studies show that improved breeds and improved feeding reduces the amount of methane emitted by from livestock. We are trying to teach them manure management. Manure management is key because the methane that comes from poor manure management is a lot. So we are trying to teach them technologies. And under the crop subsector, we are telling them, in order to maintain soil fertility, there should be minimum disturbance of the soil. But there's also contradicting interests because now the president tells us mechanization, we should promote mechanization, but you also have to know that the land that our farmers have, we have smallholder farmers who have land up to 2.5 acres. And then you're telling them mechanization, but what type of mechanization are we doing? So for us, we're trying to tell them to use reapers. Reapers they'll just create a line without digging as we have always done. We drop the seeds and then we don't disturb the soil because the more you disturb the soil, you make it so soft and easy for the water to take it away. We are telling them to reduce on like, you know those days when I was growing up, they would tell us to work in the garden and then you go and burn all the trash, all the grass, and then the place would be like a compound. We are running away from that. We are telling them, no, you need to leave the trash in. All the crop residues should remain or you take them back. You shred your beans, take back the residues. Because when you burn them, you're burning the nutrients that would have helped you produce more the next season. So these are some of the things which we've been doing, but they have not been knowing.
If I may interject there,
yes, please.
One of the things that you read through in this report,
yes,
is the issue of knowledge.
Yes.
And listening to you, you are talking about a lot of stuff, yes, that you guys are doing. Things which, when we visit a few farms which are run by experts like you, we get a chance to see. But an everyday farmer deep in Bushenyi, where I come from in the village, what they are doing is a different story. And when you see the east and the north, which are burning more than any other region, farming, it's a different. How, at the ministry, what are you doing to move all this expertise and knowledge to the people who are actually digging? We talk about the 4-acre model, but you just said 2.5, and actually, with the families growing bigger and the land being chopped more into small pieces, it gets worse.
Yes.
So how do you transfer that knowledge to the last person? I've been in the media for a long time. I hardly hear from agriculture.
Yeah, I think as agriculture, maybe we have a weakness in passing over what we do. We do a lot more of the work than the talking. I would say so, but if you really interact with us, there is a lot that we've done. We have our extension staff on ground. At least there was an affirmative action whereby all the districts were told to fill all the extension staff gaps that they had. At least they did that to about maybe 70%. Some districts haven't filled, but at least we have extension staff that we have on the ground. We changed it to single spine. We call it single spine. Those extension staff, each district reports back to the ministry. They bring the reports every month. But we also go and work with them, the extension staff. But also there are challenges. We have to accept that there are challenges, that an extension staff is there, but they are not enough to reach out to all the farmers. 2, the facilitation, as in means of transport. They don't have fuel. Now they gave them the PDM. The PDM was put in midst of local government. But whatever the PDM is doing is agriculture based. And here the agriculture extension worker has to be into play. The ones who are making for them the business plans and so on. But they are not, there is no budget on the agriculture side that facilitates the extension workers to help these farmers achieve what they want, as in the different projects and enterprises they are trying to set up under the PDM model. So you see, we need to balance the boat, as they always say, because if the money, and actually I don't understand, to me, I don't understand, and please don't quote me, I don't understand why PDM was put in local government. But there was just one thing that they put it, why they saying they put in local government, because of the parishes. But these extension workers work with those who have been working in those structures. So sometime back, when I was in the ministry, at least they had called the district production officers to give their thoughts about the PDM model and how they can maybe help change a little bit if there is changes, if there is need to do that. So you see, those challenges are there, but we have extension workers on ground. But how do they meet the farmer is another problem, because you see our budget in agriculture is very big, because when they give us a budget, we have research, both narrow and NAGRIC for the livestock, and then we have the ministry, the staff, different, we have 3 items: livestock, crop, and fisheries. And by the time they break the budget, so it remains for only mostly salary. And most of the work that is done, the money that we use comes from our development partners. For example, for the climate change agenda, as in agriculture and climate change, most of the work that we've been doing, the money is from our development partners, who tap money from the climate finance, as he mentioned. So you see, we should have a buy-in. The government and our leaders, the politicians, should really go, and we should have funds to put in place some of these climate change initiatives, that for a government, not only tapping from the climate finance globally, but the government, what is our take? What are we doing to make sure that all this is put in place, so that by the time the global climate finance comes in, we are doing something already. So those are some of the challenges, but we are there on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Merida. Jared Tenua, we've seen, I mean, you don't even need this report to tell you that the East and the North are really bare. And the 2 regions, also when you go to other reports, other information that comes that you and me have been interacting with, when you are looking for the levels of poverty, they are deeper. The relationship between environment degradation and poverty. The other weekend we were in Jinja, and I've had the benefit of walking through the whole of eastern Uganda, and you just see the land bare. When you try to interact with the people, you hear poverty. What do we need to do? First of all, one, how did we get here? And then, what impact has it had on our environment? And are those people still even growing enough food to feed their families? It's too many things. You know where to touch from.
Thank you for the question. I come from that region. I come from Iganga, and I think I can pick a leaf or two to throw onto the fire. I hope I'll stop it. One key thing in the Busoga sub-region is the growing of sugarcane. You find that this is a large-scale crop. Where to benefit, you need to start from some good amount of land. Think about 100 acres and so on and so forth. That is when you can break even and start making the money. But because of the poverty, even somebody who has half an acre, 2 acres, they want to engage in there. And we have a huge population in that part of the country, and land holding has gone down. I think both sides could have disadvantages and then, of course, advantages. Once you have land which is no longer productive to you, it would probably be better to depend off the land. You go into the service sector, where you can probably be able to gain better rather than from the land. And that is already happening. You see small trading centers coming up, the urban poor trading centers in those small places. Even where I come from, the village has become a town council in Namungalwe. And you see it multiplied many times. There are many places here in Kampala where they say the chapati makers are Basoga. So there is migration taking place from those areas to other areas. There it has been 2 factors. One, sugarcane growing, big population, poor technology to produce, to use those small land holdings to be able to make a living. The other side of the east, we used to have pastoralism and agro-pastoralism, which are somehow also struggling because there is a move to make sure that these people settle down. And you'll find that the most vulnerable when climate change hits, they suffer, and there's a lot of food insecurity. And that is why World Food Program is ever in Teso and Karamoja disputing food. I think pastoralism should be supported because it is linked to the culture and livelihoods of these people. But the way how we are pushing these guys to settle down, it looks like the whole thing is going to be dismantled. The access to water resources and then grazing grounds is becoming limited every passing year. And the opening up of roads and a bit of infrastructure, the discovery of minerals, people are settling more in Teso and Karamoja, and that spells disaster for these areas. Basically, those are the 2 areas. But we should get out of the comfort and start addressing these issues. Today we are talking about the environment and those disasters linked to it. Flooding, landslides, and the like, because we've not done a good job. Even these things which my sister is talking about here, where we are doing sustainable agriculture, the sustainable use of land, we are not jumping far from the ground. Because why then are we having these problems? Why are we having the lake silted? Why do we have poor fish production? It's because we are not managing the landscape very well, and experts will tell you that if you want to see how far or how bad you are managing the environment, look at water. It's a mirror reflection of what is happening on the land. And that one we see every day. The lake is green, in some cases the rivers are brown. That is a bad end of term report which we get every rainy season. We are not doing well. And once we are done with that last tree, once we are done with that wetland, we may not actually get to that last tree. There's a very big social problem that is going to come up. All those boys, my brother there was talking about the 70% of this country. They will not sleep comfortable on that bed when they have nothing to eat. They will not even wait for the lunch which you said you are waiting at the dining table and it's not coming. Those guys, we've started seeing them. They walk around Kampala, kicking people like tennis balls. That one is going to increase in intensity if we don't address it. The destruction of the environment is already becoming a crisis, and there's another crisis coming. Please let us address these problems squarely with all the might we have. As journalists, I think the ball is already on our court. We need to understand these stories very well. So many things come to play. We talk about climate change, environmental destruction, flooding, blah, blah. This is one whole problem. Yeah, we need to sort out the issues of inequality, skilling our people to make sure that they become more productive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Honorable, you said you have charcoal at home. I mean, how many of us don't have charcoal at home? I mean, don't have charcoal at home, don't use charcoal at home. You don't use it. Wow, good representation. Honorable, we've seen the numbers. People are banning charcoal. I mean, we saw the other day you are former MP, Odongoto, you know, taking out the tires of the vehicles which were loaded with charcoal from Padel, and we've had the president say stop. You know, I still see somewhere in Ntinda charcoal from Guru at 75K a sack. How do we make this a reality that next time we ask in a room of people seated at Hotel Africana having this kind of conversation, when we ask how many of us are not using charcoal, and it's actually 100%, is it possible?
Yeah, it is possible, but...
What are you doing? Because now you are the government. Yeah, you may be in opposition, but you are part of the government. You are an MP, you are a legislator, you appropriate resources. What are we doing to make it a reality?
Yeah, we are in government, but not at the top and the tail end. You see,
you appropriate resources, Honorable.
We appropriate, but the final figures sometimes do not reflect what we suggested. That is why we boycotted even the reading yesterday.
What's the little you are doing?
We have appropriate. Actually, we have an alternative budget. As opposition, we came up with proposals that if we were the ones in environment, natural resources, all sectors, we have an alternative budget.
As a shadow environment minister, how would you make people hate using charcoal?
Yes, that is why I emphasize that we need to bring in the gender issue. If you ask people who said they don't have charcoal in their kitchen, there are other qualities of theirs. Maybe they are not married, maybe they are single. Yes, you go ahead to ask why, probably. And then also their lifestyles. So, if you still, a woman member of parliament who still has to look like the women she leads, because the moment you separate from the voters, you are finished. So, there are gender issues that still tie us back. We have the issue of okubobeza. You get it? You are prepared in matoka and it has to. And so, cooking is a serious quality of a good wife. Yeah, it is still high. Even in the villages these days when they bring somebody will that one manage to cook? Cooking is serious. Then they also those other issues you like very much, but also cleanliness and also what? Washing, maybe digging is also another quality. So if cooking is a serious quality in a wife, and then you are saying the way you cook, you don't want to look at banana leaves, for example. Now, we have to design technologies that accommodate some of those cultural practices, or else we leave marriage. We leave it. We decide to leave it. Even if educated men still want the cultural treatment. You get it? So they even separate us like that. The other one is for gas and all that. But people have people have their descriptions currently. People have their descriptions, and those are the descriptions that take us somewhere. And so it is very important to incorporate these issues. The presidential directives have a lot of issues. Sometimes we see the president say this, but when in the actual sense it cannot be implemented. They put a halt on charcoal exports. Oh, but how do you now determine that the charcoal from Chiboga is going to be exported or it will stop in Nakurabi? How do you determine the two? Now, what about us who have been advocating that people grow trees for charcoal? And now the trees for charcoal are ready. And then you say no more cutting. Are you saying the tree farmers' children should suffer, should not go to school? So we have to understand that. But how do you just put a stop over when nationally it is only 4% that can use electricity and gas? How can you just do that? Are you saying that we should stop cooking? And women cried out to us that you people, you need to advocate that the transition, that is why we talk of the energy mix in our discussions, that slowly by slowly we shall be running out from biomass, the charcoal and firewood, but we cannot say stop now. So the presidential directives didn't work because they lacked the gender sensitivity part of it. So when I wake up, what do? You'll ask me, for example, somebody like me, why do I retain a charcoal, a bag of charcoal in my kitchen? For the last month, where I stay when I'm in Kampala, we must lose power. There are blackouts. I've even forgotten when I finished a whole day without a blackout.
Yeah, but the other day Karoma came on the grid.
But it came, but even yesterday we had a blackout.
But are you saying we are not producing enough electricity?
The infrastructure is too poor. People who are ready to pay for electricity cannot get it throughout. The other time I had just put food in the electric cooker, and the power went off. So what is that? You have just put fruits in the blender, it is off. And much of these other renewable energy options like solar cannot accommodate cooking. I think the best one would be the biogas. Those people on biogas, at least, those ones are assured. But this gas of ours, you can't do much. So I was requesting that we have to address those other gender issues, and then we have selective law implementation in Uganda, and you are ashamed. Honorable, welcome. Honorable I always I tell him that he comes from a rural municipality. You know, a rural municipality is different from an urban municipality. So these are the people suffering with charcoal, yet they said they are in a municipality. So
they are still burning it in the
municipality. And when they are sharing the gas cylinders, those are people who have forgotten. They put cylinders in nearby Kampala suburbs, and they painted them yellow. That was also another challenge. Yes. So,
but at least the heat do not change.
Yeah, those issues are also very important politically. So the honorables are forgotten, yet they are in municipalities. So there is selective law implementation here. Yesterday I listened to people who were evicted from the wetland, and they were like, they settled there some time back. Yes, that more than even 30 years. They were telling me that they have been there before independence. We have to emphasize these members. There are people who settled in wetlands before the Wetlands Act was established. And their land titles included wetlands. And the land titles still have wetlands. Now, you cannot just send somebody like that without anything. There are certain groups that need to be compensated. And then others who just came in also need to vacate without. But these people would be comfortable if they are assured that where they were chased, nothing comes in. But they're like, should we see any factory coming, any land use other than what? Papyrus. We are coming for those establishments. They have told us they have teamed in associations. Should they see anything cropping up from where they were chased, they are coming to demolish. And why shouldn't I support such people? I will be with them. I thank you, Mr. Tenywa, for standing with us. He has the best questions, relevant questions for us, but we must appreciate it that this subject matter also bores. It bores. That is why many media people are like, the front line should talk about the corrupt MPs and not wetlands or what. You get it? Even everywhere.
The day they wait for news and they don't show up, they know that it's not boring.
You know, that one is still somewhere far for some people. But the subject matter.
Sorry to interject. I don't think it's far. If any one of
For
you
some
has
people.
been, let me tell you something.
For some people.
Let me tell you something. For most of people in the media, their earnings are almost fixed and they've not changed so much in the last 5 to 10 years. But the price of matoke has more than tripled. That's the reality they are living with. The kilogram of rice in the last 10 years has more than quadrupled. So those are some of the realities they are already staring at us. Only that, as Gerard said, we are shying away from addressing them. I think what we need to do as leaders in different areas is to show people the realities and the threats on our heads. Yes. I think as leaders, and as leaders I don't mean political leaders, as leaders we've shied away from telling people change or perish. Because we want either their votes, their praise on social media, we want their likes, and what are we doing?
Yeah, thank you very much for reminding us that, and we are calling on everybody, and we thank you for elevating Mr. Tenywa and bringing him in all our discussions, because that one also gives media personnel somewhat energy to engage in environmental issues. Otherwise, I am an advocate, everybody knows it, but I appreciate that it is boring to some people. Even in Parliament, recently, I'll give you this as my last submission. In Parliament, recently we had a challenge that the Budget Committee had very many people. And I think the Speaker brought in some idea of how to reduce the members from that committee. They organized for a workshop on a Saturday. And so they invited all the members. Hey, it was packed. Packed. And so, members, Saturdays with us and our social functions, many MPs failed. Some MPs failed. When we came back in Parliament, she just announced and said, those who didn't turn up for that workshop, you better look for other committees. Actually, go look for committees like HIV, climate change, go to those ones. So meaning that this subject matter is not only boring. So we have to always bring out the cost implication of most of these things. And we are requesting researchers to always attach value to the loss. Always attach it, such that people get to know what we lose when we don't address environmental issues.
Thank you very much, Honorable. And I'm glad your fellow Honorable is in the house. We will recognize you, Honorable. You're welcome. Guys, questions? Questions to our panelists? Observations? Let's make it chop chop. You put up your hand, I get to you with a microphone. Do you have a question? Yeah. Okay. If you guys don't have, Honorable is ready to go. Me, I like honorables.
First of all, my name is Silas Augon. I'm the MP representing the people of Kumi municipality.
And also the chairperson.
Chairperson of Uganda Parliamentary Forum on WASH. WASH is water, sanitation, and hygiene. And you know, everybody says water is life. Without water, sorry for you. One time I woke up in the morning, I tried to turn on the tap turned itself down. There was no water. I realized that this was now a very critical topic.
And paid bill?
No, the bill was paid, but water was not there.
Okay.
Amazingly. And that's what I found out is talking about. You can be there, you say, now I have paid my bills, I have loaded your car, then the power goes. What do you do? Chui, and you are gone. And that is what has happened in real life. So what I realize is that in that massive level, if you look at the entire population, you've been referring to the greater north, I would say, the eastern and northern Uganda. Indeed, one time I was in a chopper. Those ones fly quite at a lower altitude, and you'll be able to see even your house, and you identify that one is mine. I saw the difference between the other side and the other side. And indeed, this other side of the country looked to be so bare. And that is merged with poverty. You come down, you smell it, and you're almost touching it. A poverty this side is real. It's real. And I realized that there's a big connection between poverty and the crisis in climate change. How people who are poor resort to the natural resources, in my view, because they feel those resources are free of charge. Nobody is going to charge you.
It's the only thing they have.
It's the only thing they have. If you want to get catfish, mudfish, what? Go to the wetland. Yes. But again, another one who feels that the only thing now I can do is to go for rice, what? Growing. They attack the wetland. Another one will say, if I got some charcoal, I can sell one sack, get 75,000, my child will go back to school. What is the issue? Poverty. Whereas other people have money from other venues, from jobs, from what? From skills. Most of those people don't have anything. They feel when they go to those natural resources, that is the only person, a cheerful giver, who gives naturally. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. There's a hand here. Yep.
Thank you. Susan Heiser from Climate Action Network. These were just some of the observations I noted which were not showing in the report, but have been touched a bit by the panelists. There are just two issues. Now, one, I'll be brief, is that there is need to advocate for a just transition through application of just and transformational solutions. Maybe when I give my examples, you members will be able to understand this. For example, you were talking about the difference in the wood and the charcoal. Now, the wood and the charcoal, it's about energy efficiency. So one opts for one option in regards to, as an alternative to the other, due to the efficiency, the energy efficiency that they derive from using one source of fuel to the other. Now, if we are going to advocate for just transition, we have to look at our population. You will not tell, like we said, many of our people are really poor. So if we are going to promote, how do people transit from maybe the fossil fuels to renewable energies? We have to encourage the use of improved cooked stoves. For example, I'm giving it as an example. How do you do that? Is one should be able to utilize technologies that where they can be able to use less fuel. For example, if people go to the market, the women know this. When you look at charcoal, the light charcoal, cooks faster. I mean, it cooks faster and cooks less. The heavier charcoal cooks longer. Those who know it know that. But what does that mean? It means that the heavier charcoal is a more mature tree has been cut down. And
At least the men know that.
Yes, even the men probably know that.
Yes.
But that's what it means. When you look for that heavy charcoal, it means an older tree has gone down. And the implications of that, more carbon emissions in the environment. So what can we do? We need to be able to tell our people to understand this, the science in all this. Just telling them that don't use this, don't use, they don't understand what do you mean. Look for alternative means of methods of cooking, improve technologies, subsidize the cost of these equipment. The saucepans, the heavier saucepans, the women know this, the heavier saucepan cooks longer and better. The lighter one, it may not do a good job. Now, these things cost more. They cost more. So these things have to be explained to people. You are switching one technology for another and tell them why and be able to subsidize on the costs for them to be able to adapt and to be able to do a just transition. Now, when we go to the other second aspect is climate justice. Now, Kampala last year, I think 2027, there's what we call the Kampala Declaration. It was launched here in Uganda. But what we are doing, I think, evicting people due to climate change, we have just done that. We have evicted them from the wetland, and we have just let them to go, who knows where.
Another wetland.
Yes, but we have just done human mobility due to climate change. The same declaration we declared here in Kampala in 2027, I mean, was it 2022? That was COP27. So let our actions need to speak. What are we doing as a country? While it is important for us to be able to educate our people not to occupy these wetlands and all this, what are the people in authority doing to allow people to, the extent that they have put up permanent structures, you wait them settle down, and then you evict them. You are causing human suffering. They are wrong, yes, but you are causing human suffering. So we need to do, as a country, we need to style up. We need to act when we are supposed to act, and not wait until people make mistakes, and then we come rushing into act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. If you guys remember, Sudhir had his hand up as you take the microphone, Sudhir. If you remember the guys in Urubiji, the swamp, I think they were the veterans who had camped around Parliament around 2001. And when they were getting them where to go, they ended up landing in the swamp. And yes, 20 years later, they've been evicted as strangers. I don't know how they got there and how they're being evicted. Sudhir, your question.
This one goes to the legislators.
Honorable Silas, that question is for you.
Reports have been published about environmental degradation in Uganda. Myself, as a NTV, we have done that. I've not seen members of parliament take up that and raise it as a matter of national importance. I think if we had true environmentalists in parliament, these matters would be on the floor every day, because every corner, as even some of you drive to office, you at least with your own eyes see where people are degrading environment. But I must say, Parliament has betrayed Ugandans in terms of pushing for this and pushing the authorities in charge to act. I have talked about poor financing, especially on the side of those who are supposed to protect the environment, NFA. They are constrained, they can't do much. So you hear Parliament, people increasing salaries, what, here and there, and then tell people the responsible authorities, we must fight environmental degradation. But what are you doing as legislators in terms of legislation and lobbying to ensure that at least we see cause of action? The president has spoken about this. He said, he admitted that they have been always thinking the enemy is the one who might, attack them from the neighborhood. in terms of army and the rest, security has always been their emphasis. But now they have remembered that actually another cancer is environmental degradation that they need to face as authorities. So as parliament or legislators, what are you doing? These ideas that have come up, they have shared a lot here. What are you going to do? Is it just a meeting that will end here and then we call you again for another one? And on the side of, in terms of budgeting, how much do you see it, or what do you think needs to be done so that we see resources being channeled towards protecting the environment, other than you hear, like this initiative that has come up, funded by the World Bank, paying 70% as long as you have a water source and you're given a small-scale rapid irrigation system. Do you know that so many people don't even know about it? Awareness is a problem. You go to Wachiso, many times every financial year they are returning the money to the coffers. Reason, people have not taken it up. What's the reason? Maybe they don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The microphone to the Honorable Silas. He will answer that question, and then we take one more question, and we come back to our panelists to conclude.
I think this has come at the right time when I'm also around.
That's why I picked you to answer it.
Yeah, so, and you know, when the media gets to get concerned about the environment, you now know Ugandans are getting concerned about what? Environment. Because my sister was complaining about the choice of topics to be discussed on media. People attend to frontline when they are talking about corruption somewhere, but when it's about environment, everybody is hurrying to sleep. I'm happy today, this is coming at a time when we really need to choose and make our priorities very well. Yesterday we were listening to the budget speech. Water was given a certain amount of money. But I think throughout the speech, the president didn't talk so much about issues of environment. If you look at the percentage of the time allocated to the comments, maybe his speech was so much on certain things as opposed to environment. It is a concern that we also take. We don't want to go defensive, but I think it's very, very important that we complement the efforts of the country. You are saying Sauti za Wananchi, the voices of the citizens, the media, and all the people here bring out the real voice. So for us, we want to listen and say, what is it that we can do better? For instance, I know that as Parliament, it is not true that we have been so silent about matters of environment. But I think the appetite to hear more is there. So we must put in more effort so that the voice about environmental crisis should be louder. I think that I must agree with you. It's not true that we didn't say anything about it. For instance, one time, I complained in Parliament about the use of maram. Do you know maram is sealing up the water on the grounds? For instance, there's a wetland in Namgongo. When you move from Agenda, go to that small place called Mbalwa, then you turn back to the Catholic shrine. Before you reach that school called Golden Berry, there is a swamp there. I realized that some people were bringing maram early every morning. And debris, they pour, they retreat. They pour, they retreat. Within like 3 months, they had already created a plot which is around 200 by 200. So we might have even to regulate the use of what? Maram. I raised this on the floor of Parliament. But the relevant people took so long to react. And today I have not seen any action. I have kept on asking why. So as Parliament we raise these questions sometimes. But the truth is certain actors decide to stay on the ground. Why? She said it. Selective treatment of the law. When it's about some people, they grab. When it's about pastors, they chase away. If it's somebody who has a lot of money, they leave. You follow that route of SETA. There is a church which used to be there. Let me stand up now because this is a serious one.
You talk about the church you stand.
Now, you go, there is a corner. As you are going to SETA high about, there is a church they are erected in a wetland on the left. Of recent, I realized it had been erased down. Did you see it?
Yep.
Hey, it was brought down after some time. It is after we had also complained. We've been complaining about it. But how many other people have erected the facilities of that nature in the wetlands?
Are you going to reverse the land title which was given to the Chinawata?
We are not the implementers. Ours is to raise the concerns.
But have you raised it?
Yes, we have raised. Of course, we always raise. So the issue is, in this Kampala here, there are several of you, even some are here, who have constructed in what? Wetlands. Today, if I point out on your name, you'll say I'm a bad man. And then you'll even say I'm a corrupt because I'm saying you are bad. And that is where we have reached as a country. It is something which is a pandemic, or it is now endemic. And is eating up what? Society. We all think that for you to get quick money, most especially in Kampala and Wakiso, just go and reclaim what? The wetland. Because a plot of land, you can now not get it below 30 million shillings in most of these what? Areas. People are taking it as a softy ground.
So the second part of the question was resource allocation.
Resource allocation is something that is critical for us to tighten our belts on, and we need to improve. Recently, if we talked first of all about water resources, for Lango and Achiola alone, we need up to 1,037 billion to fix water issues in those areas. But that comes along conservation, because we need to conserve the water points. You can talk of irrigation, yes, but where does the irrigation water come from? It comes from maybe the ground. How sure are you will sustain the water underground if you are not taking action here? So for us as Parliament, we are now saying that as we allocate resources, let's allocate while being mindful about sustainability. That is critical. The money should go there. You should be talking about irrigation, but also talk about preservation. How do you conserve the water so that it's there even for the future? It is something that we must attend to.
Thank you very much.
I think the problem was the time. The time was not enough, but I'll come back again. Thank you.
Yes. My friend, the last question at the back is standing with his hand up. And then after that, we'll come to the panelists. 1 minute each. 1 minute. I will put a timer.
Thank you so much. My name is Vincent Siriko. I work with Radio 1 and Akabo Skubiri. I'm asking for precision from our earlier presenters on what ought to be done for the inaction from the various stakeholders who are expected to implement the vast programs we talked about. For instance, you talk about the degradations happening downstream, but we know that every district or area has a respective environment officer to that. Now, whereas we've cited all these challenges, I want your recommendation on what ought to be a solution to the inaction, to their inaction, beyond the lamentation. What should be done to address their inaction to see them coming to? Finally, to the selective aspect the Honorable Cyrus hinted on. Yes, you talk of the incident in Lubiji maybe as a spark of this and other various conversations happening in the media space. But then there's something that in my many years of experience, of practice, I've seen government compensate a number of people, say in forest reserves, in so many other aspects. And when an issue comes up from people in Lubiji and others, that maybe it can be a mass redress to this kind of evacuation. We evacuate these people through maybe a mass compensation arrangement and things of the kind to see that it's not selective, that some others are compensated, but here none. What will be your take on this, maybe?
All right, thank you. The first question will go to Robert, the second question to Honorable, and then after that we come 1 minute each, wrap up. Please keep it brief.
Thank you so much, Joseph, and thank you so much, the audience, for the powerful questions. Because of a very good report that Twaweza has done, join me. We say, Twaweza ni sisi. All of you, let's go. Twaweza ni sisi. Twaweza? Very good. Someone is saying, Chitegezachi. Hey. So, Twaweza, Madam Marie, Violet, you have work to do. What does Twaweza ni sisi mean? Joseph, I want to start with a recommendation to our members of parliament. She talked about the disaster money that has been earmarked in the bucket.
Is that your concluding remark?
Yes.
We need to be mindful of time.
Yes.
Conserve time also.
Yes. She has talked about the disaster money. I want to tell her that we have seen money that has been allocated for environmental issues and climate change, but that money never does the work because of what Honorable Cyrus was talking about, corruption. The hemorrhage, the amount of money that we lose because of corruption and the misappropriation of the money. Some people are looking at environment and climate change as a cash cow to lobby for money. I'm told there's money that was earmarked for climate smart agriculture, 40 million US dollar earmarked for afforestation. Money never does the work. So what the solution is, Article 249 of the Constitution says that there shall be a disaster commission which shall be able to oversee a disaster fund. But that has never been done. What we see is that money is sprinkled in the office of a prime minister as disaster preparedness, but that money actually doesn't make it there. And when a disaster hits, you see the honorable prime minister running around with some money in our bag, just politicking and giving some money, which does not solve the problem. So my recommendation is that the Committee of Climate Change and the Committee of Environment and Nature should pick up this issue and be able to see that we have a disaster commission which shall be able to oversee these issues of disaster risk reduction. Finally, Joseph, we have had this very good report. I request that we disseminate this report to make sure that it reaches as far as wide. For us as the Environment Shield, we did the State of the Environment report and we unearthed a lot of environmental issues. And to find a way how to disseminate the report, we did a Twitter space where we were able to attract over 1,580 people tuning in to be able to listen to the report and be able to disseminate in the soft copy. So I want to also to recommend to Twaweza to ensure that we disseminate this report, because the biggest problem is lack of awareness, especially on the local communities, to ensure that civil society organizations, government entities receive this report and be able to appreciate the reality on the ground, that we are dealing with a problem that is already with us, that our planet is already burning and is happening already with us, not something of the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And his question?
The question of, there was about what?
The question of getting the local governments to step up on enforcement.
I request that Honorable should respond to that, because she's the one who is the shadow minister.
Thank you very much.
But as civil society, we have been engaging people in the local communities.
Pass on the mic to her.
Yes, so we need to engage the local communities to say they also, and the local government to say they respond to these issues. But they can't respond to what they don't know. So dissemination of the report is a starting point.
Thank you. Honorable.
Oh, I'll probably be responding, but I'm also requesting all of you to respond to some of these, because we need individual efforts. You see, everybody's efforts counts.
But then we also elected you.
Yes. That is why, for example, we are requesting, if I asked some of these media people, we are going for plenary at exactly 2. If I ask them, what story are you most interested in capturing in today's session? If you tried to inquire from the media people as you go to Parliament, because all their media houses are there already, what story are you more interested in capturing in today's session? Environmental issues may not even appear anywhere. So we are calling on everybody, try to publicize. Some of us who advocate for environmental management, we need also to be praised and thanked. And the censure motions can also be on those who corrupt and misallocate environmental funds.
You should start one.
Yes.
Get them, start one. We'll
yes,
support
that
you.
is what we are saying. That,
Yes.
But sometimes whistleblowers, media people are the best whistleblowers. So raise these issues such that we also take them on. And please don't get disappointed. If the entire parliament has done nothing and you have done something, be happy with that. So we are trying our level best. That is why we are even requesting that you can get the Hansard, the parliamentary Hansard, and try to check out which issues were specific on climate change or environment. That is how we shall be able to erase these procedures. What people who count a number of times that they have spoken, but spoken what? Order, procedure, and nothing on environment is under that. Then let's encourage our manifestos also to have some environmental aspects.
And you
Eh,
said,
you
said
see?
manifesto, you're about to come back for votes.
Yes, manifestos. We let's encourage. And for example, we have what we call minimum demands. Media, civil society organizations, this is the time for you to come up with minimum demands on natural resources management. And then you raise them up. And then we are able to measure Parliament. We are able to measure other institutions. How have they performed in line with the minimum demands on environmental management? Even we can measure ourselves. If I compare my manifesto to the minimum demands, am I there? And if I'm there, how am I really appreciated? So, appreciation must be part of it. When you listen to environmental discussions, evictions, people should do cancel land titles in forest reserves, people should not degazette. There are many people who have done good things. Let's learn to incorporate those who have done well and appreciate them. This is happening in other sectors, education, health, defense. Defense people are getting more what?
More money. More money.
Yes. What are we doing? And then let's also advocate that the army goes back to the monitoring function. Otherwise, people fear that gun and they fear the uniform. But if we let the army go into implementation, who is going to monitor? So the environmental police is very poorly serviced, no money, and then yet they are the ones who are supposed to follow up with the demarcation of our natural resources and monitor compliance. Then we have very many people, the number of people who are untouchable. Here in Uganda, the number is increasing every day. But even the media people are threatened to share these people's names out. People who accepted with the NEMA under the environmental impact assessments that they are going for rice growing, and now they are in sand mining, and nothing is happening to them, and they are doing it. The other time I traveled in the night, I saw trucks along Masakaruwera coming. I don't know even how many they were. District environmental officers are not allowed to peep. There are very many factories around. Environment officers are not allowed even to peep on what is taking on in some of these investments. So monitoring, I feel this army could leave the rest of the brigades, engineering brigades, and they help us with monitoring. It is even good that their salaries were increased. I will end by requesting all of us to also advocate for the establishment of the Disaster Management Act. We had 3 acts some 3 years back. 4 actually. We had the National Environment Act, it passed. The Climate Change Act, which is present. There was the Wetlands Act, and then the Disaster Management Act. And because the Prime Minister's office with what is lacking, the Disaster Commission is not there, they sat on it. That is what should direct us. That is what should, because you look at the composition of people on a certain disaster. I saw the disaster on COVID, the disaster on flooding, landslides. I even don't see professionals in environment management on that. So let's advocate. The more you raise it, the more people appreciate it when we come on the floor to demand for it.
Thank you very much. When you saw the committee, you saw on a disaster. Imelda.
Thank you, Joseph. I don't have much, but I would still think that, yes, we are talking about climate change here. People have had climate change, but most people don't know what is climate change. So we need to do a lot of sensitizations up to the grassroots for our farmers, even some of extension workers. If they are to help the farmers, they should be well informed about climate change. So people say climate change, what about it? So that is key to build capacity of the different stakeholders and up to the grassroots. But also, one thing I would also say is that we also have to create alternative livelihoods. Like, for example, people who have been using the wetlands to derive their livelihoods from, or those who are cutting the forest for land, as in for agriculture. If we are stopping them, what next? Because as we said, the population is growing, the land is not increasing. So there should be an affirmative action that they create alternative livelihoods. For example, somebody can do agroforestry and have beehives and in there. And then if the youth, you see the youth are going to borders, or those who have been chased from the wetlands, you're saying they're already kicking people here. We should, if we are removing them from there or stopping them, where are they going? The government should pick interest and see how can we help them. Put them in such, they may go into mechanics, they should be occupied and trained so that they can get where to derive a livelihood, apart from the forest, which we're trying to conserve, or the wetlands. That is what I can say for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Imelda. Operation Wealth Creation.
I think we need to fall in love with this country again. And this is a job we can do very well as journalists. It's only strong citizens, strong institutions that can be able to build a better future. And here I even refer to the environment. We need to protect these resources, the wetlands. We need to protect the future. Those people we are neglecting, the chapati makers, borders, they are going to be the dangers of tomorrow. It will not matter how many walls you are going to build around your homes. They will come and eat those goats and cattle on your farm. We need to empower the citizens. We need to behave as a country again. Of course, power has been stolen from many of these resources. When you talk about power, people think about power in State House. No. There is power which is around us. Power of managing those resources, the wetlands, the forests. Even before colonials came and the post-colonial governments were in place, these resources were being used well. A local chief would say, no, don't do this. This is a village well. You not go to defecate there. And they were implemented. We need to rediscover this. As we write these stories, we should network with others. Do what we can in our small way, in our community. We should be able to work on things like garbage. We come together as a village, as a church, as a mosque, as a congregation, and take action about some of these things. But the future and the way forward should be building better citizens and better institutions. Even the names we blame and the NFAs of this world, power has been stolen from them. There's that note or that form, that EIA, which is before you, you as the executive director. I direct you to sign it. If you don't, you'll have no job. Those things happen, and these are realities. But when we come into the open, we keep blaming those institutions. We need to empower those institutions, negotiate for space for them. We as the journalists, because we have that power to investigate and make many other people accountable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Kingdom of Uganda is a fairy tale. A landscape is different from anything elsewhere to be seen in the whole range of Africa. What message I bring back? Concentrate on Uganda. It's the power of Africa. That's what Winston Churchill wrote. I wonder what he would write if he was here today. If he came visiting Uganda today, I wonder what he would write. And as my colleague, my senior, put it, Gerard Tenua, the responsibility is each one of us has something to do. When we look back and we say, that's Sudhir, that's Gerard, those are the guys of NTV, New Vision, and NBS who are supposed to do that job, and the MPs, we are walking away from our responsibility. We are walking away from the country Uganda that we enjoy. Nothing, we'll never have another Uganda other than what we have. Each one of us has a responsibility, and to protect it, cherish it. I've enjoyed Uganda, beautiful as it is, for 47 years. I would like my kids to enjoy it better, and I would like them to find it better than what I found. What better way to do that than protecting our environment? Honorable, I would request you to give concluding remarks, just 1-2 minutes, and then after that, I'll invite all of us to come here in front, and we take a group photo as we launch our report. Honorable Cyrus.
Thank you so much. First of all, we would love to appreciate the panelists because they have done us a good job. At least if your hands are not paining, you can clap better if they are not paining. Yeah, because indeed, I think it was a super selection. from Parliament, from the other areas, perfect. And if you have the book, I don't know whether you have your copy. Do you?
There's a copy on every table.
Hey, everybody should be having their copy. You can look at it and start with the photos. And you see from the extreme left, that scorching area, which is burning. Then look at the green in the center. Then at the extreme, there's a woman whose rights have been abused. She's carrying a lot of firewood on her head. She's suffering. But the title, the writing is very clear. A burning planet is already happening. And I can tell you indeed, it's already happening. And we have something to do. You do not have to wait for another person. You have yourself to do something. And the time is now. You are lucky to be a part of this meeting. Uganda today is struggling. There is poverty, yes. There is disease, yes. We have here refugees, yes. But I can tell you, we have to make priorities that will save our future. Otherwise, we will want to see the future. So we are blessed that Sauti Wananchi, voices of the citizens. But this is Tuaweza, eh? Tuaweza means what in English? I don't know. We can. Eh? We can make it happen. Because Obama once said, yes, we can. So we can. We can. We can. We can make it happen. For us as politicians, we can also make it happen, by the way. I can tell you recently, just last week, I went back to my constituency. The first topic that I engaged the people on was the issue of environment. And I was telling them, we have these spring wells in our villages. They come out, the water sprouts naturally. But I see like they are disappearing one by one. At one moment, we'll wake up to find there is no spring well at all. We only this borehole water. We need to act. Because what is natural and God built is really natural. And it gives us the best. The taste of water from a spring well is so different from all this water that you know. Because the other one is distilled naturally by God. So, we have a responsibility. If you looked at this document and you looked at what the citizens have said, for instance, in it too, they are saying insights of the citizens, and then you see the next one. Out of 10 citizens, 7 Ugandans see deforestation as a main cause of climate change. What are we going to do? It is our own people. If you go to the next page, you will see citizens experience a changing climate is mixed, though many report that conditions are increasingly difficult. And that is the truth. So the people who went and really did the work got us the right thing. The next comment is that 7 out of 10 citizens report declining agricultural yields. You can do your best, but I can tell you, you don't get much. Then we blame the people that they don't want to work. When they ask politicians for handouts, we complain. We shouldn't even complain because those people have worked, but the yields have what? Refused. They have not worked because the rain is also maybe late. So there are so many issues. In the next comment, they are saying most citizens report that making a living has become harder over the past 5 to 10 years. So making a living has become harder. You are seeing now increased numbers in terms of prostitutes. Now it's even worse for us who are in those roads where the truck drivers are. The young girls are going there. Look at the connection between this and teenage pregnancies. And then early child marriages. It's because of this kind of what. So climate change has affected nearly everyone. The next report says that 8 out of 10 Ugandans report experiencing effects of climate change. People used to think it was something for America and maybe Europe. But today, I can tell you people have accepted now and they have said yes, they have surrendered. Now they know it is a reality. We used to realize rains around March. By March 15th, it should have rained. Now you cannot even predict. You have to wait for these people of Entebbe to announce what they are saying. That's when you will know what is going to happen. And that's where we are. So I think it was timely that we had this meeting and we had this sharing. But somebody rightly asked, are we going to meet and then meet again without doing anything? We continue meeting. We came here, breakfast. You know, breakfast is heavily loaded. They bring for us matoke, even at break time. They bring for us fruits. They bring for us eggs. So we come back again, we eat and eat, but there is nothing coming out. That will not be good. So, my thinking is that we must act out of this meeting. Let's see at least something change. Then we shall count ourselves serious workers. I think that is something very, very important. As Parliament, we commit, for us we shall do our part in terms of appropriation to push for more funds to fight against climate change. Allocate more. But also legislation, tighten, but also increase the oversight. We want to ask those who are responsible. If you are bringing down a wetland, community, a community that has been what? On a wetland, you have raised their, put their houses down, and you are living. I saw them complaining about Starbucks or something. They said, but this building is also in a wetland. You have put our houses down. How come you have left this one? Then the other one was responding and saying, this one got what? What? A wetland permit. So does it mean that some people are permitted to be in wetlands and it's in order? So you can imagine, that's where we are as Uganda. Some people like they are permitted. So if you got a permit, you can stay. And yet we are sure that it's what? A wetland. That's where we are. So may God see Uganda so that we're able to see the future again. God bless all of you for God and my country.
Thank you, thank you. I would like to invite the panel, come here, and Honorable, you don't go, you join them, and all of, Madam Edie, and all of us, let's get in front here, and we launch this report, and we go home to preserve our environment. Anne? All of us, see? Except the ones who are going to take the photo. You come with your report, come with your copy. If you don't have your copy, Gerard, I will lend you this one. Gerard, I will lend you a copy. Anybody from the audience joining them? Do you come with your copy? Yes. Brenda, Madam Susan, you're not joining them. We need some justice.
Which is talking about the issue of almost all households use either firewood and or charcoal as the main sources of energy for cooking. And this is really a serious one. Parliament needs to help people to get cheaper power, cheaper energy. Yes, so that people can, everybody should be able to get a gas cooker cheaply. And they should not be painted in one color like you said. Maybe we should have a neutral color, white. Maybe white. Gas cylinders.
Okay, Honorable, since you have the microphone, you can proceed and formally launch this report to make sure it reaches.
Okay, members, you can lift your report so that everybody can be able to see you. This is a very powerful report. And the title is so glaring. It's saying that a burning planet is already happening. And the introduction is very rich. And we get the voices of the citizens around this very important matter. And today, we are proud as a team of concerned citizens across the divide to be here to launch this very important book and report. We do this as you raise your book up for God and my country. Amen. So let's take this book seriously. Let us act. This is the time for action. We are going to take a group photo.
You want us to get closer or?
Close in a little. And you raise that book. The title should be seen. Can we have chairs and or to make it better? Honorable Minister, please, you need to sit.
Is your photo balanced now?
Hopefully. Come.
Oh, where's our report? Raise your report.
You can raise your report. Say cheers.
Thank you very much. So the panelists are here. They are available to do one-on-one if you would like to do one-on-one. And yes, and we can depart at leisure.